Today's shed secret is this piece of Spitfire, and we're going to find out what it's got in common with a leak. One of the many unpleasant things about a war is being shot at, and even more disagreeable than that is being shot at by your own side. There have been many ways of trying to avoid this over the ages, starting a long time ago. Allegedly, when Cadwallader, the Welsh prince, was organising a battle, so that the Welsh knew whose side was Welsh, they wore leeks in their hats. It might be apocryphal, but it's a good story. This one is going to meet a tasty end in a leek and potato soup. Aeroplanes are more of a challenge. You could try painting them exotic colours. Red Baron had a good go at it. Or like this Battle of France Hurricane, you could paint one half of it black and one half of it white. To prove it's a real thing, here's a piece of Battle of France Hurricane with that very central line just there off the radiator. One of the most popular methods was flares. Every day would have a different coloured flare, that would be your colour of the day, and it would be a closely guarded secret. Don't tell him your colours, Pike. So if you were crossing the coast unannounced, all you'd do was pop off the colours of the day, and hopefully your journey would be untroubled by flak or other fighters. Unfortunately, it didn't always work. This lovely illustration from a wing leader book shows a real incident from August 1940. RAF Blenheims had the misfortune of looking a lot like German Junkers 88s from behind. Despite shooting off the colours of the day, this Blenheim's still being handsomely shot down by its own side. So how do you pop off your colours of the day? Well, with one of these. This is a Webley No. 4 Mark 1 Star flare pistol. It came out of a Royal Navy Corsair crash, and we're remembering Chief Petty Officer Eels with this one. It's been thoroughly deactivated. It has its certificate there. And to do that, it's been welded up quite seriously, so nothing really moves. But what you would do to fire it, the observer would grab it in his hand, thumb back that catch, which would allow him to open the front of the gun, open the barrel, choose his colour of the day, put it into the breech, snap it shut, and then the clever bit, these lugs on the side, there, would lock into part of the side of the aircraft. There'd be a special socket for it. There's a lock for it there. That would hold it in place, and then when you pull the trigger, the flare would pop out, and hopefully the right people would see it and stop the shooting. It made it a very safe way of doing it. You also got them on Messerschmitt 109s. You can see one here. You got them in Corsairs. You can see one here, but not in a Spitfire. A Spitfire pilot had his flare pistol in a holster on the right-hand side of his seat. So whilst he was flying his Spitfire, he'd have to take the pistol out of its holster, open it with whatever free hands he'd got, choose the flare, which was located right behind his knees on this rack here, put the flare in, open the hood of the cockpit, stick his arm out with a flare pistol, fire out the colour of the day. And bearing in mind the slipstream would be about 200 miles an hour, that would be quite a challenge. If you made a mistake and he fires off the flare inside the cockpit, not only is he toast, but he's brightly coloured toast. So to avoid a negligent discharge and singed trousers, the Ministry boffins came up with this. It's a remotely operated signal discharger. The very first Spitfires had the discharger mounted at the back of the fuselage, firing downwards. You can see it here, and also here in this film. And here's the real thing. This is the loading end. This is the muzzle firing end, and you can see it's exactly the same calibre as the signal pistol, but you haven't got to pull the trigger yourself. This came out of a Mark 1 Spitfire, N3221, so we're remembering Flying Officer Fleming, who'd come all the way from Australia to finish his training very early in South Wales, unfortunately. We can't tell whether this one was mounted to fire straight down, or like with later aircraft, to fire upwards. You can see which way this was facing when the aircraft hit the ground. The gubbins under here is the wire control mechanism. The cockpit controls of the signal discharger were a little bit like a CD multi-changer. You'd got a pre-selector to choose which cartridge you were going to shoot, and then you'd got the play button, which was a T-handle you pulled to actually pop off the cartridge, with no danger to anybody. If you look closely at the rather lovely big 124, the FX Mark 9 Spitfire, you can see right on the back of the fuselage there is the firing hole for your signal discharger muzzle. Usually it was covered with a piece of doped fabric like the gun ports on the wing of the plane, but very occasionally you can see a picture of it. So that's today's shed secret. A safe way to fire off your signal cartridges, and a great way to avoid being shot by both sides. So the connection between an old bit of Spitfire and a leak is they're both methods of identification, friend or foe. The leak has now, as promised, turned into tasty leek and potato soup.